Hello, David Clarke here from DVC Training, and in this video I'm going to be looking at making a particular title in NewBlue Titler Pro 5 with the version that actually comes with EDIUS 9. And the title I'm going to be looking at is this one. This is the title that I use in all of the chapters on my full-blown EDIUS tutorial, and it was made using VizTitle. So I thought, how would you do the same thing using NewBlue Titler Pro? So what you can see I've got here is I've got 3 boxes that come in with text that comes in at the same time. There's a bit of a motion blur going on, and then I've got this kind of lens flare going around it as well. So let's see if I can make something similar in NewBlue Titler Pro. I'm going to make it over the top so I can at least see it in the background. It might help me line stuff up. So I'm going to click in the track above it, go New Clip, Titler Pro 5. Now I know my titles are 6 seconds long. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over to this thing here and change it to 6 seconds. If you watch any of the tutorials on Titler Pro 5 from NewBlue, you might notice they have some extra boxes here and a thing called the elastic timeline. Well, that's not in the version that comes with EDIUS 9. Obviously that's the one I'm using. It's the free one that you get by getting the OFX bridge for EDIUS, and I'm just going to use that. So I just first of all changed my duration to 6 seconds there. In the full one I'd have other boxes. I don't in this one. Next thing, I want to actually just stuff in the text and the boxes. So let's go up to the text that's already there and let's change it to, and I happen to know that my text was in fact impact, so let's pop over to the attributes and change it to impact, and I think it's probably about 20, I don't know, let's put it in there, move it over the top, and yeah, it's roughly right, it's probably maybe 21, but that's probably close enough. Okay, so there we go, I've got that text in, which is those words there. I'm just going to copy it and I'm going to move it over to here and change this one to, and I think that's a little bit smaller, so let's actually make that down to, I don't know, 16. Yeah, that's probably about the same. And let's copy it again. So I'm just, Control C, Control V for copy. And I'm going to select this and I'm going to put it in the website address, which is quite a lot smaller. So let me just come over here and make this, I don't know, 8. How's that? Yeah, that's roughly right. So I've got my words there in roughly the right place. Next thing I need to do is put in the boxes. Now hopefully I'm not confusing you by having that title in the background. Obviously if you're making this up from scratch, you won't have those words there. Anyway, the next thing I need to do is to put in some boxes. So I'm going to add a shape of a rectangle and whop it down here and make it the right size. So let's just drag it out to be the right length, the right height, and I'm going to add a slant on it. Inside of VizTitle I can pick up these points and draw them. Can't do that here. I've basically got some boxes that I can slant, but I can actually still make something that looks exactly the same just by slanting it a bit. So I've got the box selected. I'm going to come up to global and I'm going to just skew it. So there we are. I've now got the same kind of slant on there. That's set to 59, so I'm just going to remember that. I'm also going to change this radius just to put some slightly curvy edges on the box, which is nicer. Next thing I need to do is change the colour. So the one that was beneath it was kind of green, so let's go back to Style, go to Colour, change it to Gradient, click on it, and then change the colour. So this dot here, that represents the top of the gradient. I had the gradient sort of twirled around like that, so just grab the dot and move it around. The bottom one is the bottom of the gradient, which isn't quite dark green. So let's again do that. And I think I'm probably slightly more yellowy green, to be honest. Yeah, that's probably about right. It looks good anyway. It's in front of the text, so I'm going to right click on it and say send to back, so at least it's behind the text. Now I've got one box in there. I'm now going to just copy that, shove it over here because I need a second box. Let's make the box smaller, put it in there, and that's about right. But again, this one, as you can see, is a kind of grey, so let's put that into the middle and that into the middle. It was a bit darker, I think. Yeah, how about that? Click the bottom one, make the bottom one darker. That'll do. I could obviously spend time making exactly close, but I'm just trying to get something similar. So now I've got my 2 boxes. Again, let's send that to the back. I'm going to copy and paste that one, and I'll use that as the basis for the bottom box, which I've just got to drag over there. I did have a bit of an emboss on the original, so maybe I should just add a bit of a bevel. Do the same on there, add a bit of a bevel. On this one I've done 0.8. Let's go to this rectangle and put a 0.8 bevel on that, and go to this rectangle and put a 0.8 bevel on that. Just to make sure all of the rectangles have got a bit of an edge. And finally that last one, yep, send that to the back. So I'm going to get out of this, save it, and there you can see I've got my new title. Underneath it, that's what it looked like in Viz Title. That's what it looks like here. You haven't got the colours quite right, but you got the idea. I've got the similar kind of look. Now I want to animate it. I'm going to move it out on its own, so now that we've got that roughly laid out, go back into it, and I'm going to put some animation on that. Let's arrange them just to make it easier. So I'm putting the training at the bottom with its rectangle, and I'm putting the rectangle that goes with editing up there, so I just know which is which, just to make my life easier. But still they're not moving. Now the simplest way to animate it is to use some transitions. So I'm going to go out to the library, choose Transitions, Animations, Fly In. So let's see, I'm looking at the rectangle for editing. That's got to fly in from the left, which is this one. You notice as I hang over it, it gives you a look at the animation, and it's not quite what I want, but I do want it to fly on from the left. So I'm going to grab it, drag it, and drop it onto there, and do exactly the same thing for the words editing. I'm going to make the finish about a second, and then I'm going to play it. Well, they come in, but, well, I think eventually is the word there. They're not coming in quite as fast as I want. It's all down to a setting in the transition. So if I select the rectangle one and go to the settings over here, you can see I've got all sorts of different things, but actually the smoothness is determining how fast it goes from in to out. If I put that onto normal and do the same for the words, and then we watch it, it comes in a bit more sensibly, just flies in at a reasonable speed. Now at the end I want it to do the same thing, so actually I'm going to grab the same fast left because I want it to zoom off, grab hold of it, drag it and drop it at the end. Again I want that to start about 5 seconds. So these are the words. Now again the words have disappeared really quickly there. That's because again we've still got the fast out, so if I put that onto normal the words will take longer. Let's grab the fast left again, shove it onto this one. So let's watch what happens with those words. Yeah, what's happening with those words is they're flying off. Just to be slightly confusing, you notice a video is popping up in the background, so let me just get out of this, save it, back into EDIUS, and ask why is this video popping up in the background? That's because the title is not actually exactly the same length in EDIUS as it is in NewBlue Titler Pro. I set it to be 6 seconds. And if you look at the duration here on the timeline, it's set to, what, 220? It's not quite right. I'm just going to right click on it, duration, and set it to 6 seconds, so it matches the NewBlue Titler. Then you can see that's why the stupid video pops up in the background. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, let's go back into NewBlue Titler, quick preview. Now I don't have a video popping up in the background. That is slightly annoying, it has to be said, and it's all down to the fact that when you change the length of the title in NewBlue Titler, it doesn't change in EDIUS, and that's just how it works. It's going to move the final resting place of those editing words up a bit, so I'm happy with that. And now that I've done that, next thing I want to do is do exactly the same thing for the other ones. So let's go to these words, let's open this up. Oh good, it's lost where I was. Oh, isn't that really tedious the way I have to do that? Okay, I'm going to click on this little pin here to pin this open so that doesn't disappear all the time. And I'm going to go back to the fly in, and let's see, these words, they're flying on from the right, so let's do a fast right on that one and a fast right on that one. I want those to finish at a second, so let me just drag that across. Then of course I'm going to have to stop them being fast, so let me just put that to normal, and in they come. Woohoo! I think the words are coming in slightly quicker than those, so I'm going to take the words and I'm going to just trim the front of it so they come in a bit later and make sure the transition matches the end of that. That's about what I want. Now again, go to the end and we're going to do a fast right at the end too. I don't want them to line up with the other ones. Just go to the second fly in and make that normal. You see, once I select the title there, you can see the transitions. That's the start and that's the end. Just make sure those fly off as I want them to. Again, the words are flying off a bit quickly, so let's make that transition start a bit later. Here we are, that's it. And you've guessed it, I'm now going to do exactly the same to the bottom one. So there we are, I've got my titles coming on and then flying off. I could tweak them a little bit more so the words are coming in at different points if I wanted to. Now there's still a couple of things missing. One of them was I had a bit of motion blur. The other is that I had some lens flares going around it. Putting the motion blur on is easy. I'm just going up to Title, Title Settings, and then tick Use Motion Blur. Just going to save it because you never know, I might want to use this one again. Then I'm going to get out of it, return to EDIUS with save, and now what I've got is a title that comes in, sits there, and then fades away with a bit of motion blur. I'm still missing the lens flare, which I shall put on in a minute. But I don't have the option for a lens flare in the NewBlue Titler that I've actually got, so I'm going to have to do that with a slight fake. It's also not playing properly because I've turned off all the caching inside of NewBlue Titler so I can get in and out quickly, which means it doesn't play back in real time. I've got to render it to see it properly. The next thing I need for this title are these little lens flares that pop up and move across and then just disappear before everything flies away. So I'm going to go back into this title, and there is actually no option in here to put on lens flares. One of the things you can do with NewBlue is if you have others of their effects, they will appear in here and you can use them. Well, I don't. I've only got this thing that came with EDIUS, so I've got to add the lens flares in a different way. What I'm going to do is just grab a picture of a lens flare from somewhere else and use that. So I'm going to go up to File and then Import, choose Image, and grab hold of a lens flare that I got from Photoshop. It's a Targa file with an alpha channel, which means it's slightly transparent. So you can see as I'm putting it over things there, you can see through the lens flare to the title underneath it. Now I'm going to want it to start appearing when these things have stopped moving, so that's about there. So when I imported it, it immediately put it into the timeline, and it's this top layer. So I'm just going to grab the start of it and make it start at just the point everything's calmed down. And I'm going to grab the end of it and make it finish just before everything starts moving off. Now it's in the wrong place and it's not quite the right shape, so I've got to change that. Now to do that, I'm going to come over to the Objects tab up here, and I'm going to go to the Global tab. You can vaguely see the Global tabs lit up. I'm going to go to that one, and I'm going to open this thing, the Transform controls, because this is how you can change the size and move it around. I could have flown my rectangles and things in using this. I didn't. I used the transition. I'm going to make this thing move around by using these controls. Now for a start, my original lens flares were a bit long and thin, so I'm going to go down to the scale, unlock it, and then just drag it out to make it thinner. So it's a sort of long, thin lens flare like that. So that's basically stretching my original kind of round lens flare that I had from Photoshop. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that back up again, and then I'm going to just take the whole thing and make it a bit smaller. Now I'm using the numbers here. I could just grab it over here and make it smaller, but yeah, that's probably about the right size. And that's where I'm going to want it to start. So basically it's going to appear, slide across that all the way to the end and then disappear. Now I've got to keyframe the movement. Now I could possibly do this with a transition. Instead I'm going to do it all up here. Make sure you get it in the place where you want it to start and then turn on keyframing. You notice here you have a box that says add keyframe, and there's one there, keyframe 1, which is that one right at the start. All I really need to do is go to the end and move it to its final location. So really I just wanted to slide across the screen. Now across the screen is the X axis, which is this thing up here on position, it's X. Y is up and down, X is left and right, Z is back and forwards. So I just want to slide along the X. Now I could grab it and move it, but there's always a possibility I might move it up or down, and I don't want it to go up or down, I just want it to go across. So the best thing to do is come to these numbers and then just drag them across so it ends up where you want it to end up. So now you can see I've got two dots on here. This thing at the start, that was added already when I ticked the turn on keyframing, and another dot at the end, which is the keyframe at the end. And there we are, it's now sliding across the screen. Now what I want to do is to get this to fade in. So I've got a couple of ways of doing that. I could just keyframe the opacity here. So I've turned keyframing on, I can fade it in using that. Instead I'm going to use a transition. So let's open up the templates, go to the list of transitions, animation, fade in, and I'm going to choose this linear fade. So I'm going to grab that and drop it onto the title. Now it's a little bit long, but now I've got a fade at the start. You can see it fades in and then moves across. Do exactly the same thing again. I'm going to grab the linear fade and shove it onto the end. And again, make it a bit shorter. So now I've got a fade at the start and a fade at the end. Final thing I'd like to do is just to make it blend in a bit more with the background. I'm going to go up to Effects and I'm going to change the blending mode. So it's the same kind of thing as the blending modes inside of EDIUS or Photoshop. I'm going to pop it onto screen and that just makes it blend a bit more with the box in the background. Now I'm just going to save it. Now this is saving it inside of NewBlue as opposed to saving it in EDIUS, but worth doing from time to time. But there we are, I've now got a title. Fades in, sits there, fades away again. Now what I'm going to do is duplicate that to do the other one that goes the other direction. So I'm just going to grab hold of it, Control C to copy, Control V to paste. It's staying in exactly the same place, but I'm going to move it down a bit. What I'm going to do that is to go back to the effects and I'm going to turn off keyframing, which deletes all the keyframes. That's just going to let me set it up in the right starting point. I only want to go left or right. I don't want to move it up and down, so it's a lot easier just to position it one place and then use the slider to move it left or right. So roughly in the right place, I think move it down a tad more, move it across a tad more. Yeah, I think that's where I want it to start. Now I'm going to turn keyframing on again. And it immediately puts a keyframing at the start, saying it's there. Going to go to the end. Now I did copy the whole thing, so although I turned off keyframing, my transitions are still there. If I open this up, you notice I've still got my fade in and fade out. Of course I can't position it at the end because the old fade in means it's disappeared and I really want to go to the very end there and move it. But that's quite easy because you can go to transitions and just click on the little eye there and turn them off. So now those fades aren't happening. I can go to the very end there, pop up to the global, decide where this thing is going to move. Where do I fancy it stopping? So how about that? That's going to pop up and then, yep, zoom across at the same time as the other one zooming across. Now just pop back to the transitions, turn the fades on, and yep, it's fading in and fading out again. So let's save it, exit this, go back into EDIUS. So here we are, we have the NewBlue version with the lens flares popping up, which is then followed by the Viz Title version. Major difference is probably that I had green lens flares in the Viz Title version, which are nicer. The way to make these lens flares green would be to have made them green in the first place. They happen to be white. Other thing worth doing is probably coming back into it, going to the title settings and making sure motion blur is on. It'll cause that nice sort of look of the motion blur. Now you notice I'm popping in and out of this really quickly. It's saving it really quickly and then I come to play it and yeah, maybe it'll manage to play it, maybe it won't. But what I'm doing here is I'm turned off the cache inside NewBlue Titler Pro. Now I happen to have a very good system so it can actually cope with that and it's probably been through it a few times already. But normally you would actually have the cache on for the title and render cache at close set so that when you left it, it would go ahead and do the rendering, which is nicer because it'll play back in real time, but also more tedious if you're popping in and out of it every 5 seconds. I mean, here I am, still waiting for it to render. I'm going to get out of it, realise it's wrong, come back into it. You know, it's boring. That's why I turn the cache off, which you might want to do. I think my final question is going to be, okay, what I need to do now is to use this title again. So now I want to save a new version of this title. So same title, but with different words. Normally in EDIUS, I'd take it, copy it, and change the copy. That doesn't work with NewBlue Titler. So instead what I'm going to do is come over here, right click and say New Clip, NewBlue Titler Pro, and it gives me a completely empty title. My empty title is open up that file that I just saved. So I went to File and Open. It asked me, do I want to save this project? No, I do not. And I choose that, which was the file I saved a second ago. And bosh, I've now got that title I just created. Now what I want to do is to change the words. So I'm just going to grab hold of those letters there and say NewBlue V2. Then I'm going to come out of it exactly as I did before. It says, do you want to save it? Yeah. Saves it, and now you can see there I've got a title that says NewBlue V2, and here I've got another one that doesn't say V2. This has gone in at 5 seconds, because that was how long a default EDIUS title is. My title is actually 6 seconds, so I've got to right click on it and go to duration, and change it to 6 seconds. But that's it, that's how I would make a copy of a title. And you've got 2 different saving things going on there. Let's just do another one. Maybe it'll make a bit more sense then. Make up a new title. I got a completely empty title. Open my template. There's my template. change the words. As long as I can get to the words, I'll be happy. And now I'm going to come out of it. Now you notice I haven't gone up to here and saved. When you save something up there, it's completely different to saving it to the EDIUS timeline. Your NewBlue titles are not like QuickTitler titles or VizTitle titles. They're not a file on the hard drive that EDIUS loads up. They're kind of saved as part of the project. So once I save in here, it isn't necessarily changing what's on the EDIUS timeline. That's why I can load up a title, change it, go back to EDIUS, and at this point it says, do you want to save it? And it saves a different copy into EDIUS to the one that I actually started off with. Now my basic template, which is saved on the hard drive, isn't changed. It's just that particular version on the EDIUS timeline is changed. So that's why there's two different saving places, and you just have to get used to the idea that, you know, you're saving a file, which is a template, if you like, on the hard drive in one place, but inside the EDIUS project, you're actually saving what you're really typing. But that's how you do a copy. You can see now, again, I've got to go in here and change the duration to 6 seconds. But now you see I've got version 3, version 2, and I've got the original. And they're all based on the same thing, but they are different. Now there is another way of making duplicates by using templates inside the NewBlue Titler, but I'll talk about that in a different tutorial. Right now I've really gone through about how I'd take that, which is very similar to a title I made in VizTitle, and how I'd make it in NewBlue, add on the lens flares and so on. And hopefully that's shown you a few quick basics as well of how to use NewBlue Titler Pro. I hope you found that useful. If you want more information, visit the website www.dvctraining.co.uk, where you can also order copies of EDIUS as well as my full tutorial on EDIUS. You can contact me on david@dvctraining.co.uk, and obviously follow me on my Facebook page, where I'll put up different news on the world of digital video. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you found it useful. And I'll see you next time.